beginning in verse 30, it says, the apostles gathered together with Jesus and reported to him all that had been done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a secluded place and rest for a while. For there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. They went away in a boat to a secluded place by themselves. But the people saw them going, and many recognized them and ran there together on foot from all the cities and got there ahead of them. So when Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When it was already quite late, his disciples came to him and said, this place is desolate, and it is already quite late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But Jesus answered them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread and give them something to eat? And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go look. When they found out, they said 5, and 2 fish. And he commanded them all to sit down by groups on the green grass. He sat them down in groups of hundreds and of 50s. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he, looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food and broke the loaves, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before them. And he divided up the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 basketfuls of the broken pieces and also the fish. Now there were 5,000 men who ate the loaves. Let's pray. Father, what a story. What a miracle. And Lord, if we are not careful today, we might think of this story as a fairy tale. We might think of this story as simply a metaphor, maybe even an exaggeration. But Lord, as we look at this story today, may we see the truth of it as it happened. But may we also see the truth of it for what you have to say to us through it today. Lord, speak to our hearts now. In Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated. Now, I do want you to get the picture of what's happening here. This miracle happens after Jesus has already been performing miracles for quite a while in his ministry. And every time he performs a miracle, whenever someone who's lame starts to walk, or someone who's blind starts to see, or someone who's deaf starts to hear, even though in many cases Jesus says, don't tell anybody, they run and tell everybody. And so the word of Jesus, healing ability, this miracle worker, the scandal, the gossip, the hearsay, the fables that are arising out of this man are spreading all through the country. And so the name of Jesus and the acts of Jesus are becoming well known. And so whenever he is spotted, whenever someone hears a rumor that he's coming to a town, we've got to the place in Jesus' ministry now where people drop whatever they're doing and they run to where Jesus is going to show up. They come to wherever Jesus is going to be next, and that's what happens here. Jesus and the disciples have gone into solitude for a while to prepare themselves spiritually for the next things that God will ask Christ to do. And as they get off the boat and come across the sea and get onto dry land, all of a sudden Jesus notices that there are all these people who are already there and they're already waiting. Why? Because they've heard Jesus is going to be here. They've gone on ahead. As a matter of fact, we read this in a few seconds, but we understand that this kind of thing happened over hours, perhaps even days. And so people have gathered and they have been waiting for Jesus. Just because Jesus is coming doesn't mean he'll be there this afternoon. Remember, they're traveling by walking through the desert and they're making stops along the way. So sometimes when these people come to see Jesus, they're there for several days before he actually gets there. And so these people are there, they're camped out, they're making whatever provision they can where they are, and they're gathered, and all of a sudden Jesus shows up, and he sees this crowd of people who are just waiting, who have come to see what this miracle worker is all about, who've come perhaps for the second or third time to hear the message of Jesus, to hear what he's talking about. And Jesus looks out over this crowd of people, and he has compassion on them because they're there not only physically hungry, but spiritually hungry. And that's where this story begins to unfold. Now, there are three things this morning that I want to share with you about this story. The first is this. Please notice that there was a shortage. Lots of people, not much food. There was a shortage. Lots of people, but not much to eat. Lots of men and women and children. As a matter of fact, most Bible scholars say with 5,000 men, it's very likely that there were 15,000 to 20,000 people total. Because you didn't leave your kids at home with a babysitter. You took the kids with you. And so dad's gone, mom comes along, and she drags all the little kids along. And so all these folks are there without anything to eat. There is a shortage. And Jesus understands something about human nature. He understands that when people get together and they're there a long time without any food, they're going to get hungry. They're going to get hungry. Hunger isn't a bad thing, by the way. Hunger is a God-given feeling that we have when we need to eat. That's our body saying, you need to fuel me, you need to nourish me, you need to take in some calories so that I can operate, so that I can be what I'm supposed to be as a body, and do what I'm supposed to do as a body. Hunger is a good thing, but Jesus understands that these people are going to be getting very hungry because they've been camped out, they've been waiting, and he's just now here. He's just now beginning to teach. He's just now beginning to meet their needs. And here are some folks who have a shortage, and when there's a shortage, people get hungry. But Jesus knew something else. He understood that when people are hungry long enough, they get hateful. Now, all of you know this. You wives know it especially well. When your husband gets hungry and you don't feed him, it won't be very long that he'll be hateful. You can only be hungry so long without getting hateful. And we use that for an excuse sometimes, right? Well, I didn't mean to yell at you. I'm just hungry and tired. And it's making me a little hateful. And Jesus understood that. But he understood something even deeper than that. He understood that when people are hungry long enough, they get hateful. And when they're hateful long enough, they get hostile. Jesus understood that when people are hungry, if you don't feed them, they get hateful. And if you still don't feed them, eventually they'll get hostile. They'll turn on one another. I don't have to go into detail, but many of you know the historical story of the Donner Party, right? Who got so hungry, followed by such hatefulness, that they eventually turned on themselves and ate each other. Jesus understood that about human nature. And he understood that these people who've been waiting and camped out, waiting for him to show up, waiting for God to meet their needs, were hungry. And that if he didn't feed them, they weren't going to be able to hear what he said and enjoy the good news of the gospel, because they were going to get hateful. And if he still didn't feed them, they were going to turn on one another. They were going to get hostile. Folks, listen, I want to tell you something. What's going on in our world, and what's going on particularly in our nation right now, where people are giving out more hatefulness and more hostility toward one another than we've seen in recent history, is all because people are spiritually hungry. It's because they're spiritually hungry. It's not about the things we're making it about. It's not about the things the media is making it about. It's not even about the things that people who are involved in it think it's about. It's not, they don't even realize what's happening. They are so spiritually hungry that they've gotten hateful and hate-filled, and they've turned in hostility on one another. And what the world still needs today, and the answer for all of these things is the same it's always been, and that's for people to be spiritually filled with what God has to offer through his Son, Jesus Christ. The answer is Jesus. The answer is not political. The answer is spiritual. What's wrong with this world, the division, the hostility that we see on Facebook and face-to-face meetings with people and demonstrations and protests, all of that stems from the fact that there is a hole, there is an emptiness in people's life that have not been filled, and because they are spiritually hungry, they are hateful and hostile. That's what's going on in our city. And until the church rises to the occasion of knowing that and then going about the business of telling people about Jesus so that that spiritual hunger can be met, we will never overcome the problems we're facing in our country today. No president can solve it. No Senate or Congress can solve it. No law can solve it. The only thing that's going to ever be able to remedy the kind of division and hatred we see in our country right now is for people to get right with God. When people get right with God, 1 John says they begin to love each other, not hate each other. John said the evidence that we've come to Jesus is our love. Jesus said, "Then know your disciples by your love." You see, love is the mark of a Christian. And the problem in our country today is that there are far too many people who have gone far too long without being spiritually fed. And we have offered people an answer that isn't an answer at all. Jesus alluded to that one time. He said, all of you who are parents understand this principle. If your son is hungry and asks for bread, you don't give him a stone. If he asks for a fish, you don't give him a serpent. Why? Because when our children are hungry, we give them something that will fulfill that hunger, satisfy their hunger, not something that won't. Guys, listen. Unfortunately, and we in the church are just about as guilty as everybody else, what we have been offering this world to feed on is a stone instead of bread. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." There's a shortage. They were hungry. They had the potential to be hateful and hostile, and Jesus understands that. That's interesting to me that when first approached with this particular problem, Jesus' response is very odd. And it's not even the response I would expect. The disciples come and say, "Lord, all these folks, you see all these folks out here? They're hungry. Hello? It's supper time. Did you think about this? Did you plan ahead? Is Domino's bringing pizza? What's the plan here?" Jesus responds in the most uncanny, unpredictable way. Lord, they're hungry. And what they were saying is, "Lord, you always have a plan. What's the plan?" And Jesus turns to the disciples and says, "You go feed them yourself." Now, we skip over that part of the story a lot of times because we don't know what it means. So let me tell you what it means. Jesus never uttered any empty words, and he never said things he didn't mean. He didn't say things just to be saying things. As a matter of fact, he was so particular about that he said, "I don't ever say anything unless I've heard the Father say it first. I've never done anything that I haven't seen the Father do first." So when Jesus says, "Go feed them yourselves," that's because he had heard the Father say, that's what they need to do. And the reason the Father had said, that's what they need to do, is because that's what they were totally and completely capable of doing. They had the same access to Father God as Jesus had. And they had seen him perform miracles. They had seen him call on the name of his Father. They had seen him do the impossible. They had heard him say, "The things you've seen me do, you will do also, and even greater than these you shall do." They heard those words come out of Jesus. They had all the ammunition they needed. They had all of the information they needed. They could have done exactly what Jesus did. And Jesus said, "Just go feed them yourself." Did you get that? They could have taken the bread and the fishes and multiplied it, not by their own power, but by the power of the same Father that Jesus did it. But instead of doing that, notice what they do. They start making excuses for why they can't do that. Jesus says, "Go feed them yourself. And the disciple says, well, what are we supposed to do? Take 200 denarii and go down to the local Kroger and buy enough food and bring it back for these folks to eat? What are we supposed to do, Jesus? Look, this is all we've got. We can't do anything with that. They missed the point, didn't they? He wasn't asking them to do it on their own resources and their own ability and their own power. He was asking them to do it by the power of God, by the resources of God. I shall supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. The Lord owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He owns it all. He owns all the wheat that makes the bread. He owns it all. He owns all the fish in the sea. He owns it all. And they had the same access. So they start making excuses. So here's my first question for you today. What has God asked you to do? What has God empowered you to do? What has God called you to do that your response has been, Lord, here's why I can't do it? Because that was their response. What has God said to you? This is what I want you to do. This is what I'm calling you to do. This is where I want you to move. This is how I want you to be. This is who I want you to talk to. This is how I want you to be bold for my kingdom's sake. How many times has God said to us, this is my plan for you? And our response has been, instead of, okay, Lord, whatever you say. Our response has been, Lord, let me give you the 5 reasons I can't do that. There's a shortage. The people are hungry. They're going to get hateful. They're going to get hostile. And Jesus' first response is, go feed them yourself. I want you to know that the answer to the shortage of this world does not lie in your preacher, your pastor, or even your deacons alone. The answer to this world's issues and problems lies in the hands of every believer who has been empowered by the Holy Spirit to do the work of the kingdom. There's a shortage. But thankfully, the story doesn't end there. There is, secondly, a solution. There's a shortage. The disciples don't get it, and so Jesus does what he normally does and begins to work the solution to the shortage. Now, as I look at this story, there are some things that are pretty much absent that we might find normal. Because most of us, when we face a shortage, a problem, some sort of difficulty in our life, our first response is to think about it. And Jesus could have thought about it. That's our response, right? Well, tell you what, yeah, that sounds like something that really needs to be done. Why don't we table that for 3 months? Think about that. Let's all go home and really give that some thought. And we'll come back in 3 months and put our ideas out there. Let's give it some thought. And Jesus could have done that, right? Here are all these hungry people who are soon going to be hateful and not before very long going to be hostile. And Jesus could have said, well, you know, guys, I know they're hungry and I know they're going to get hungrier and I know they're probably going to eventually turn on each other. But I tell you what, I need to think about this for a while. But he didn't do that. That would be our first response. Our second response would be to talk about it. Jesus could have talked. He could have sent it to committee. We love committees, don't we? Baptists love committees. Let me carefully say something. There's nothing inherently sinful about a committee until a committee becomes an excuse for not doing anything. Then it is sinful. Jesus could have talked about it. He could have said, boys, I tell you what we need to do. We need to think about it for a couple months. So let's come back together and let's get our legal pads and our pens and let's make some lists of some possibilities here to deal with this problem we've got. We've got a shortage. There's no doubt about that. There's a problem. No doubt about that. And we need to deal with it. No doubt about that either. But I think we need to give it some thought, and I think we need to think about it, and then we need to talk about it. But Jesus didn't spend time thinking about it. He didn't spend time talking about it. He did what Jesus always does, which is he touched. He touched. He touched the problem. He didn't think about it. He didn't talk about it. He touched it. Can I tell you, I love Jesus for so many reasons. appreciate Jesus for so many reasons. One of the things that I love the most about my Jesus is that he is a Savior who isn't afraid to touch any problem. Look what we've already studied in looking at the miracles. What does he do with the leper? The epitome of a person who's untouchable. A person who is so untouchable that when they're walking down the street, they have to yell, unclean, unclean, so that people go to the other side and don't accidentally brush up against them. What does Jesus do to the leper? He touches them. How was the woman last week with the issue of blood finally healed? Not by thinking about what to do or talking about what to do, but she presses in through the crowd, and it's the touch that heals her. Jesus touches the tables of the tax collectors, the sinners. He touches the lives of the women with bad reputations. He touches the lives of the people like the woman at the well who had a horrible history, broken marriages and broken homes, and now living in adultery. Jesus touches her life. Guys, understand this. Jesus' solution to the problem is always to touch it. To reach out and touch it. That's what Jesus does. You say, well, he'd never touch me. He'd never touch someone like me. He'd never touch this situation. It's too dirty. It's too filthy. It's too sinful. I've made too much of a mess of it. This is just awful. I would never even ask God or invite him into this situation. Why not? Our God is a God who loves to touch the untouchable. Now, here's the next part of that. You may not like this part as well. We love talking about how Jesus touches, but this is the part nobody likes. As his children, as his followers, one of the things he's asked us to do is also touch people. To touch people. To touch people who may not be the most touchable kinds of people. To touch their lives in a tangible way that exemplifies Jesus. To touch them. It's what Jesus does, and it's what he asks us to do. It's what I'm called to do as a pastor. But I'm also called as a pastor to be that kind of an example to you so that you can see that the thing that God wants us to do is to touch people. One of my mentors and friends says, a good shepherd always smells like his sheep. Anybody know how sheep smell? I'm going to expand it. A person who's truly following Jesus will also smell. Because if we haven't isolated and insulated ourselves from the world, if we are out there making a difference where God has called us to make a difference, we're going to occasionally pick up the aroma of those that we're with. And that's okay. Because we're not justified on how we smell. What God has asked us to do is touch. So there's a shortage and there's a solution, but there's one more thing I want you to see. More than the solution, where Jesus takes the fish and the bread, blesses it and divides it and feeds the people, more than just a solution, there is a satisfaction. Notice verse 42. They all ate and were satisfied. Now I submit to you today there are three kinds of satisfaction that happen here. The first group is satisfied with the meal. They're just satisfied with the bread and the fish. They were hungry, now their belly's full, and they're satisfied with the meal. Nothing wrong with that. But it's kind of shallow. It's kind of superficial, don't you think? I mean, there you are in the presence of the Son of God, the Messiah who's come to seek and to save those who are lost, and your satisfaction is based on the fact that he gave you some bread and fish. It's kind of shallow. But there are some folks like that. And they go away and say, oh man, that was a good meal. That was some good bread. That was some good fish. I'm full. I'm going home. And they're happy until they get hungry again. And then there were some folks who weren't just satisfied with the meal, but they were a little deeper. They were also satisfied with the miracle. They said, man, we got some good grub. But besides that, we got to see Jesus do a miracle. After all, that's part of the reason we came. We heard this guy could do miracles, and we saw him take a few loaves of fish and turn it into enough for thousands of people. That was pretty great stuff. And some of us are a little deeper, and we say, glad I got fed, and glad I got to see God work in a way that I could see with my eyes, tangible way. That's okay. It's good. You don't ever want to become like the guy who I used to have at one of my churches who didn't think he'd been to church unless he saw somebody's leg grow 2 inches. You don't want to become a miracle seeker. But there are people here who are satisfied with the meal, and they're satisfied with the miracle, and that's good. But let me tell you, the most precious group of people here this day, it's those who are satisfied not with the meal, not with the miracle, but those who go away satisfied with the Master. For Jesus did not do what he did on this day just to fill their stomachs. Jesus did not do what he did on this day just to quench their curiosity. Jesus did what he did on this day for the same reason and the same purpose that he always did everything he did. He did it to glorify the Father so that people might come into relationship with God through Jesus. And the most precious group of people on this day were the people who didn't just leave satisfied that they were filled or just that they'd seen a miracle, but those who went away saying, that Jesus, there's something special about him. That Jesus, did you see the compassion in his eyes? That Jesus, did you see how he sensed that we were hungry and then he met our need? That Jesus. Have you ever seen anybody like him before? Did you just sense that there was something different, something spectacular about Jesus? The most precious people were those who went away from that miracle that day, just not being able to comprehend how special this man Jesus was. Guys, listen. What God is interested in happening in this place is for us to mirror and reflect Jesus so accurately that people see Jesus in us to such a degree that they go away from being with us and saying, did you sense the presence of God? Did you sense that there was something special in that person's life? Man, I sensed a peace and a hope and a joy. I sensed the fulfillment and the satisfaction in their life that I don't ever see with people. Don't you think there was something special? And we have the opportunity to take that conversation and make it into a gospel conversation and say, let me tell you what you're seeing. You're not seeing me. You're not seeing that I'm spiritual. You're not seeing that I'm special. You're not seeing that I'm sanctimonious, that I'm extra special. You're not seeing that I'm a hyper-religious person. No, what you're seeing in me isn't me at all. What you're seeing in me is Jesus. Because that's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. That's what it's always supposed to have been. We've gotten so far away from what God intended the church to be. In those first few chapters of Acts, it says that in Antioch they were first called Christians. That word Christian was an insult, but what it meant was little Christs. Because when they were around those early Christians, they saw Jesus that could bring a satisfaction that superseded satisfaction with a meal or a miracle. Satisfaction with the Master. So the final question today is, are you satisfied with Jesus? Are you looking for your fulfillment somewhere else, somehow else, some way else, someplace else? Are you satisfied with Jesus? And then perhaps a follow-up to that question is this. Old hymn says, I'm satisfied with Jesus. I'm satisfied with Jesus. But this question comes to me as I think of Calvary. Is the Master satisfied with me? Is he satisfied with me? There's good news and bad news. The bad news is he won't ever be satisfied with me in my own power, my own strength, and my own ability. The only way he'll ever be satisfied with me is when I, like Paul, hide behind the cross and people see Jesus rather than me. When God looks and sees the blood and not me, he's satisfied.